Welcome to Startup Grind, and thank you so much for being with us today. I'm honored and humbled to have Romy Sigl from all the way in Austria with us today in Michigan. So, hello, Romy.
Hi, Ferris. Good to see you.
Good to
Hello.
see you. This is really exciting. I mean, we have maybe half hour, 45 minutes, maybe to drill you per se. It's a side conversation. The goal would be just to get people to understand what does it feel like and look like for an entrepreneur to be in Europe in general, and really specifically speaking about your journey and what you've done. So with that, it would be awesome if, I was fortunate to meet you, what was it, 2016, I think, back in Michigan,
Exactly. Yeah. hmm
and you were in the US on a fellowship from the Department of State. You were selected to be part of the Young Leaders of Europe initiative. And you were here, what, 5 weeks, if I remember?
6 weeks. And we ended up at Stanford at the Global Entrepreneurship Summit, and it was awesome.
Wow, wow. So I'm sure we could talk about that as well whenever you want to. But let's talk about you today and what you've done and where you are. 2012, you started this awesome business, and I'd love to hear just a little bit about your journey. What did you do before, and how did you get here?
Of course. So I'm very honored that I speak to you today. Thank you, Ferris. Yeah, my journey started more or less a little bit. Maybe I have to describe you. Um, it also has to do with the journey of my father, because my father, he lived as a young boy with his family on the farm in Upper Austria. So it's not far from here. And yeah, they had a very average farmer's life. So having cows and no technology at all. I think they had a telephone. So this was 60 years ago. And then something really awful happened. And this impacted my life until now, because he was driving his electronic bike. That's what they already had. And he had an accident. And back in those times, the medical service was not so great here in Austria, to be honest. And they gave him this white tape around his arm. So we say gips. I don't know the English word, but when you break a bone, then you need this white cover, right?
Yes, yes.
But they forgot to disinfect all this. And it was a open break. And so he was 3 days in delirium in a hospital. And then they said, maybe we should bring him to a bigger city, to Salzburg. And during the drive, it was a 2 hour drive, they had to decide that he will lose his arm. And this is why I'm telling you the story. Is this accident impacted my life up to now, because then he could not be the one who takes over the farm. So he decided to leave his village, to go to the city and become an office job, to get an office job. And this is how I came to Salzburg. Otherwise, I would have ended up in the small village, then taking over the farm, because in my family, I'm more the one who is related to nature and to animals. So I think I would have taken over the farm, but everything came very differently. And so we moved a lot to the city, to Salzburg. My parents, they really were keen on that we get a good education. And we were one of the first in our family who had really good education and have a high school degree. So I'm not the typical story. Maybe, maybe yes. Maybe it's a self-made startup story, as we usually in Europe only know from the US, but it also works here. So I learned from my father and my mother that when you have a dream and you really want something, and in their case, it was that they really wanted to have an independent life, have a house and a family. And also by being handicapped, I learned from my father that you can solve any problem. And he did all his house, our house, on his own. So he's a inventor. He invented a lot of constructions, how he could do it on his own, only with one arm. And this inspired me so much. I will never forget how he mounted those timber on the ceiling without anyone's help. So he constructed all those supporting systems. And sometimes it was really hard for him and he got angry, but he always achieved what he wanted. And I think this is why I'm telling you, early childhood experiences, in my opinion, or in my case, have a huge impact on us. So this is the first story of my life that maybe is interesting to share. And then I worked hard, I studied hard. Our parents, as I said, they always wanted us to have the best marks in school. So really emphasizing, did you already do your homework? What are your grades? And then I ended up at university. I studied design and product management. So this is a mixture between marketing and how to design products. And it was the very first chapter that I did it. So it was brand new. The region did not know either you are expert in marketing or you are a designer. So I was both, and in the market, in the labor market, this was really new. So the people did not really know what I can do for them. And I ended up in a really well-known agency. It's Austria's biggest design agency. And I was so happy there. I felt like in heaven with all those great people from all over the world. And I did that for 4 years. And after that, I felt that I need to be free. And this is where my journey started, that I started the co-working space, Co-working Salzburg.
This is fascinating, Romy. It's honestly, listening to you, it's clear to me that you've taken some time to reflect, because you're speaking about your childhood. A lot of times people, and I've worked with, as you know, thousands, if not, hundreds of thousands or millions of entrepreneurs, they're just really going, right? They're really not taking time to reflect. And I feel like when you do reflect, it gives you an opportunity to grow, because you start recognizing what really affected you through the journey, knowing or not knowing, right? So your childhood, you don't remember necessarily what your dad exactly did, but you remember those moments that made an impression on you. And those only come when you take the time to reflect and think, what did really happen? Why am I operating this way? And when you start reflecting on the past, I agree. I mean, we all know that by the age of 6 or 7, you're somewhat, your machine is already printed, and now you are at the same, kind of like level that you will be for life, right? This is, we start saying you become hardwired by the age of 7. By the way, we have a couple of people saying hello to you I got chats and I got texts. So, we'll have some time to, of course, to have a conversation with anyone else as well from the audience. And that really is insightful, because when you take the time to reflect, I feel like you take the time to grow. So nice reflections. And what a story with your dad. I mean, I'm sorry to hear that about his arm. And it sounded like he was able to turn that to actually better maybe his life and your life in a way, without even knowing from this incident. Romy, you have so much we could unfold with what you said here earlier. And I'm curious, why did you start this co-working space? You could have, worked, in design products. You could have done all kinds of things. And I love your setup. It's clearly you know how to set these things up. And I love how you position the book and all these, all the different, the globe, all the things that you care about, and the right here in one picture, which is very fabulous. So why co-working space? Why not, being a teacher? Why not being a designer? Why not being anything else?
Yeah, that's a good question. Why not being a teacher? Why not staying a designer? At a certain moment in my life, I felt like I really love people, but I don't love bosses. To unfold my potential, and this was another reflection, I felt like I should have more option than just the way that my boss wanted me to perform. And in my sign, I'm an Aquarius, and if you believe in it or not, but I'm an Aquarius who really needs to be free to show his best, to be the best version of myself. And so I said to my boss, I really appreciate what you started. This design agency is awesome. I met so many great people here, but I need to leave. I need to do my own thing. And I want to start a co-working space where everyone is at eye level, that people and projects can they can come together, and in the next project we have a new setup of people, and we always hire the people that fits best to the objective and to what we aim to do. And in an agency, you always have to take those people that are available for this time. And you need to pay them. And I thought we could do this differently. And he said, Rami, you will lose all your money in the first month where you have to pay the rent for the big office that you plan to have. And you will only attract the losers. And he said that he tried it himself when he started. And he would say, don't do it, rather stay or do anything else, but don't do co-working. It's not working. And that co-working was brand new when I started. In Austria, we speak German. So this name co-working is an English name. And so people did not really know what is special about it. Is it rather like a shared office, or what is the new thing about it? And the brand new thing about it is that people really work together because they trust each other, and they work together when they like each other and not because they have to. And here we already have so many great experiences, memories. People became family. They have babies together. It's like a little bit like a hippie movement, although it's not, because we are still in this capitalistic system and we all have to pay our bills. But it works in a do what you love way. And I'm still so much in love with all the people there, and that I enjoy so much. I go there 3 times a week because now I have a baby boy. No, he's not a baby boy anymore. He's 3.5. And as I said before, the first years in your life define your character and give you so much. And this is why I decided to really take a lot of time for him. And so I develop the culture in the co-working space where it's totally fine that I'm there only 3 times a week without having any staff.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you said, that everyone is at the same level and everyone can operate in the way that they want to operate. That's not an easy task. And, especially when you're trying to make it cooperation and collaboration, because each person, to your point, has, see the world in one way or another. And to get them to all agree to do something that's very powerful, Rami. It speaks highly of the environment that you're able to create. And as Austria is so similar somewhat to Michigan in the population wise. You're about 9 million, we're about 10 million in Michigan. There are a lot of, if I remember doing the research, a lot of engineers in Austria. So that tells me that they like things to be set in stone. They like things to be kind of like, guided. They don't like rounded corners. They want square corners. So, I'm sure you saw some challenges with creating this environment of saying it's more of a loose place to come to and create your own than having to say, here's the job and here's the description, go make it. Your thoughts on
Absolutely.
that? Yeah.
So people ask me, why would I want to sit next to a competitor? I would never do that. Why would I want to do that? And I mean, such people I did not even try to convince, because this is totally the wrong mindset. Everyone is different. So even if 2 designers or 2 app developers or 2 architects are sitting next to each other, they can have bigger projects together. They can learn from each other. They can discuss certain topics. So this, in 10 years time, so we are turning 10 years next year, this was never, ever any problem.
That's awesome. So that tells me also you understood really quickly who is your ideal customer and who should be attracted to your business versus just saying, I'm not saying that not everyone is welcome. Everyone is welcome, but it seemed like you focus on attracting and targeting specific types of person or customer to be at your co-working space. So is there a theme or is there a specific, niche? I know you said creative earlier, but I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on anything specific.
You mean my target customer?
Yeah.
So in the beginning, I tried to have a lot of startups. I did a lot of startup initiatives. We started Startup Salzburg. We did startup weekends. We did startup breakfast. We really introduced the vocabulary startup to Salzburg and to the bigger region, because back 10 years back, this term was not so really known here. So people did not consider themselves as a startup. They considered themselves more as either a medium-sized company or a new company or an entrepreneur, but startup was really new. And I remember as we organized the first pitch event, so the very first pitch event was in our co-working space from the region of Salzburg. And I went to all the banks I knew and asked them, do you have a family office? Would you like to invite people from your customers, people who might be business angels or investors? And they stared at me and asked me, what? So our clients are investing in houses, in land. We never invested in ideas. What the hell is that? So I really had to do a lot of pioneering work there. And now after 10 years, and also the activities in Vienna have had a great impact on that. We had this huge festival called Pioneers in the palace of die Wiener Hofburg, so in the big palace of Vienna, from the queens and the kings. So it's really old and really prestigious, and everyone knows it. And they did their big startup events there, and it was once a year, and this had a huge impact on how people spoke about startups, how they got to know the concept. And yeah, it was really interesting times in the last 10 years.
Well, Romy, and by the way, for anyone with us, please feel free to ask any questions. Although I have a few hundreds of questions for Romy, but if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to do so. I know Joe already said hello from Farmington Hills, and I think you met him he said that Ann Arbor. So you might remember that when you were visiting Detroit as a fellow with us here at International Strategic Management. Cool.
So
So
yes, oh, sorry, I didn't answer your question fully.
yeah,
So yes, it turned out that startups are not, I mean, they are my image, they're good for my image and for certain activities that we do, but the clients who pay my bills, who pay me, are not startups. So yeah, people who pay me are people who are already into the business for quite some years. So they are introduced service providers, they are app developers, they are agencies, online agencies, they are creatives, they are, as I mentioned, architects, building engineers. So they already had some time at home and they felt like the home office is not their thing. Either it's because children at home playing or doing their homework, or it's because at home you're easily distracted. And so it turned out that this very small companies are my target clients, and the majority of them is either into creative industries or into technology like app development and stuff like that.
very cool. And it sounds like you go after projects together in somewhat, or you bring in projects to the group. Is that seems to be the culture of the place, Romy?
Yes, sure. We try whenever there is a project coming up that we ask our people, do you have time? Can you do that? And also we had in our kitchen, we have a lot of conversations about politics, about society, what's going on. And so from time to time, we are starting projects by drinking coffee together. And from time to time, from these conversations, it's the start of a new startup.
That's really interesting. So sometimes those coffee cups can generate new energy in the entrepreneurs. That's fabulous. You know, Romy, I'm curious with your experience having been to the US and, you know, obviously you're in Europe. Did you see anything that stood out from you from a European entrepreneur versus an American entrepreneur perspective? If so, what, you know, like your journey to start the business in Austria, was it straightforward? Did you have to jump through hoops? What kinds of things did you have to do to open the business and get licensed?
Mm. So I'm reflecting on this topic also a lot. You know, I don't know if people of you have ever been to Salzburg, but Salzburg is really old. It's really, really beautiful, and it's really filled with a lot of culture. So every stone there is somehow related to history and has a story to tell, and which is awesome. It's great. I love my hometown, but starting something new, it's so hard. People don't understand why we need that. Shouldn't we rather take care of the old thing that we have and bring this to the future and yeah, how to say, care about what we already have? We don't need anything new. It's all perfect already. And this is for me the hardest task of all.
Yeah, it's fascinating you say that because when I was doing my research, you know, the flag has been around since 1119, and I was like, wow, that's impressive to have the same flag for almost 1000 years.
Yeah, and the story of Mozart and the sound of music and the Salzburg Classical Festival, it all works out so well for us, for the established companies, for tourism. And why should anyone do anything else if this works so well? But my character is, I love new things and I don't want to leave my home because I'm really well settled here. I have my family here and I have my husband's family here. And I love it. And why should I leave? So I try to bring new stuff to Salzburg and to Austria.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's a still a struggle. And by the way, entrepreneurship seems to be, from my perspective, having done it in few countries around the world, it seems like it's the same struggle. You know, when you're struggling with a startup, the doubt, the being doubtful about it, questioning it. Why should we change? You know, when it's something interesting I've learned a long time ago, which is when people say it's a new idea, it's a new business, it's amazing, and I say actually the hardest thing to start a business is when you're introducing a new product or service or technology because people love to do what they're used to doing. They don't want to change. They'll tell you they'll change, but they don't want to really change because they like just the way it is. So, you know, the usually say the biggest competitor is what I call status quo. Status quo meaning that this looks fabulous. Why change it? It looks great. Let's just keep doing more of what we have been doing. And it sounds just very similar and very real in where you are in Salzburg. So it's fascinating to hear. Thank you so much for sharing that, Rami. So continuing with this journey, so you founded this, you were able to launch it, and now you almost will be 10 years next year. It sounded to me like you also started venturing in other businesses because it sounds like other businesses, you know, came to life. Would you elaborate a little bit on that? I know that you have a couple of your own, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about them or some of the things that you're doing in addition. I also remember you published a book. So, you know, we could talk about any of these things. I'd love to hear a little bit more about each one of them.
Yeah, sure. So one project I'm really proud of because yeah, political activities and improving society and making sure that never ever anything like racism or similar happens to our country is so important. And even in those times where slowly history begins to being forgotten, it's even more important that we don't forget it. And so when the refugee crisis in 2015 started to come to, or people come to Austria and to Salzburg, and they left at the train station, and in the first moment, we welcomed them and even applauded them, which was kind of weird. We were sitting in the co-working space, talking about it and telling each other we have to do more than just helping them with pouring them water or giving them something to eat, and then they move on because they want to go to Germany. And this is NEMSA, this is Austria. We are not Germany, but most of them wanted to go to Germany. But some of them, they love to stay. And just today and yesterday, we spoke about what value people who come to our country bring to us. And even in a very traditional topic like the coffee culture, Viennese has a very rich and traditional coffee culture. So there is no Vienna without entering a coffee house and enjoying this lifestyle of feeling a little bit like a queen. And you know that a person from Armenia was bringing coffee to Vienna first, and he opened the first coffee house of Vienna. So this is a really interesting story, and we are thinking about it, writing it on a cup of coffee. And this startup that I'm speaking about right now is fair matching. So it's fair and it matches people. And with this service, we help people from mostly Syria, but also from other countries from the region to stay. I mean, they are allowed to stay, but we help them to find a proper job. So if a mechanical engineer comes to Austria and is looking for a job in this area, then we try that he does not end up at selling pommes or fish and chips at McDonald's, but that he gets the job that he fits in best, because this is best for everyone. It's best for him, it's best for the country, and it's best for the person who is looking for someone like him. But it's a challenging topic now that we are so much confronted by Corona and the COVID crisis. News is full with this topic, and social impact funds are rather empty than full, due to budgets are taken for other topics, but we are raising the flag since 2016. So in those years when I was in the US, a lot of things happened afterwards and also before. So this social startup Fair Matching started back then, and now we're having 5 employees. We are working with the government, and we are also working with the Chamber for Labor. So because they don't have the time to speak properly to people, to look into their eyes and what do you really want? What is the job that you did at home? Please describe it to me as good as you can, and I can find out how good your German is. So I, and not the machine, is then telling which speaking level you are in. And then we go to the companies and say, hey, we might have someone for you. Maybe you can have a cup of coffee together. So that's how we work.
That's amazing. I mean, Romy, it's something I've always shared with people. I feel you're just a great example of that. Is entrepreneurs, although this new terminology, well, it's not new, but it's, floating newly. Social entrepreneurship seems to be a big deal. I always have said I've never really met an entrepreneur that is not a social entrepreneur, because when you are starting a business, usually you are looking to fulfill a demand or a problem, or you're solving a problem in a community, or you see an opportunity that you want to provide something for the community to do something with it. And that's, to me, already in the right thinking. Most entrepreneurs I've met don't think about, okay, let me make $2.5 million first, and then let's think about what is it that I'm going to be doing. They usually think, okay, what problem am I solving? And a lot of times, to your point, take their own money, pour it in, because they believe that this is going to do something for the community beyond them. And then you just described to us, all of us here listening to you, is really yet not only you solve the problem for the co-working space and wanting to have people the same playing field to work together and find projects together, but then you saw another need or another problem with the with a challenge with the refugees coming to another country, and you thought of a great insights, which is why let them be something else when we could leverage that talent to advance us, because the diversity, as you know, of co-workers and how they think and what their experiences can make the results of the work much better than if we all went to the same school, we all went to the same ideas, and we all had the same life. And I think I
Exactly.
reflect back to your dad, I think that's part of it, right? He just picked up and had to learn whole new skills overnight to move on from a little farm to the city and figure out, okay, how do I even get a job, and how do you dress for that, how do you talk to that, how do you do the work? All those things seems like fueled you with a lot of wonderful insights that now you're unfolding to the world and able to support the world in a much different way. So congratulations, Rami.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool. You were going to say something, I cut you off. You said exactly, so I'll let you reflect on that.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned diversity. Diversity is so important. Startups and or digital people, we tend to be in our own bubble. And as we come with Facebook and being at home, stuck all day during COVID, those bubbles, they are rather shrinking than expanding. So this is one vision in my life, that whatever I do, I try to disturb bubbles and bring people together from different backgrounds, from different mindsets, and people who would have never met. And so, yeah, that they learn, that they get inspired by each other, and they leave and say, who would have thought?
That's awesome. So I want to take us back to your startup co-working place, because it's no longer startups, 10 years. I'm sure you've
Yeah.
had really ups and some years, and you've had some really downs, maybe years, maybe days, maybe months. I don't really know. But I'd love for you to share with us maybe some of your highest moment and some of maybe your lowest moments.
Let's start with the lowest moments.
Okay.
When I had the idea, I did my research homework, I went to Berlin. Berlin is like the hub for co-working spaces and startups in Europe. And of course, I went to my capital, to Vienna. And everything I learned there was so inspiring. And everything I learned there was, you cannot do it alone. You need either to have a co-founder or a team or an investor or a mentor or a partner. And I didn't have one. And so in the first 2, or let's say it was 3 years, I was somehow a little bit desperate searching for a co-founder. And then after 3 years, it turned out that it works so well. I decided, okay, research is nice, but it's always a look back. It's always a circumstance for a specific city. I can do it on my own. So this desperate looking for someone who could fulfill me was, when I look back now, a waste of time. I should have gone in full self-esteem. And so here I am, this is what I do, and I can do it on my own.
Yeah, no, that's a great insight. I always people when we get entrepreneurs who want to go and see, like, what Google is doing and what some of that, and I always feel it's awesome and you should go and visit for sure and just know it's an inspiration. But when you're starting, you can't think about them today. You got to think about what they looked like, 10, 20, 15, 30 years ago. And that's really what you got to do. And in your case, you have to learn from all those things and say, but I'm in a different place, I'm in a different city, I'm in a different environment. What can I do with it? But it's hard because, especially if you already had your coworkers before you started telling you that you're going to bankrupt before you even start. And then you go out and you want to be inspired, but you realize you need all this people and all this money and all this time, and you're like, okay, I can't do any of this stuff, I better go back and go to my job. And that's really what most people would have done, right? But I think entrepreneurship, and this is why we're talking through startup grind, is when you start, sometimes you just got to start. You can't just make it perfect. It's not going to be exactly how you want. and that's part of the grind, right? That you have to go through to learn what
Mhm.
is the business going to be. And sure, are there better ways? There are, and I hope that there are programs, obviously training, education, and and programs that can support you to minimize some of the risk and minimize some of the pain that you may go through. But unfortunately, you just have to go through some pain on your own. And hopefully, if you go through some of these programs, it will eliminate some of the bigger pain, but there are always going to be some pain. But I'm glad that you came to the conclusion that you could do it, and you've been doing it, and it's clearly that you're going to continue to do it. And I'm going to get to that in a minute because I want to ask about the future of where you're going. So that was one of your maybe lowest moment, right? So what was one of your highest?
Yeah, I think my lifetime high up to now when it comes to work, it was entering Egypt, leaving the airplane, breathing the hot air and feeling like, okay, now that we did this co-working camp here, it was an event where we brought together 45 people from the MENA region, from Middle East and North Africa, and all of them were having a co-working space at home as well. So we brought together those co-working space front runners, and this moment where we really did it, and we did it in Cairo at the Tahrir Square, so where the revolution happened 3 years before. And this was like the moment, everything is possible if you really want it. It felt a little bit like after Mission Impossible. We were a very diverse team, and we were then in the airplane back to Europe again, and it felt so good, you cannot imagine, because this was like a mission that, what do you plan to do? Why should someone give you money for that? What is the output of it? It sounds nice, but it's crazy, because there is how to say, a travel warning out there, and you go there. Are you completely crazy? Why?
Wow, I mean that's usually I always tell people that's usually a good start. Whenever I say it's this is crazy, I think this is when you should do it.
Absolutely.
Because that's usually the sign is like, okay, that's this is why I'm doing it, because everybody else thinks it's crazy. So that's
And
awesome.
also, the learning was so high, because before I thought I can do a co-working franchise system and rule the world with it. So I have written the book, and I know how we do it from bottom up, and now I can roll it out to the globe. And then I learned from a woman from Saudi Arabia, her challenges, from a space founder from Yemen, his challenges, and those challenges were really not funny. Like people entering a community space with a gun, like people not being allowed to have gender mixing. And so these are topics that in my culture, I would not have even thought about it.
Yeah, but those insights, I'm sure, helped you think through what some, well, first of all, hopefully inspire you to say that you have it a little easier and you could do this much, faster and hopefully in a meaningful and successful way. But also, it probably inspire you to think about design, back to your initial, training, right? And how you design a place that is welcoming and inviting, but also could be protective if, God forbid, something like those kinds of things happen. And I'm sure those things might have been settled in your mind, not even knowing that you thought through them. But that's, to your point, is when you start reflecting on the childhood or reflecting on the learnings, you might have embedded some things in your behavior or in your design that allowed you to do that. And I think that's what makes each one of us unique, right? All the experiences that we live through that give us those insights that really no one else has. They might have similarity. We all go through pain. We all go through some happy moments, but each one of them is different, and each one of them creates some impression on us that makes us unique. So, Rami, with your co-working space, if I remember, you've also had some really interesting projects. If I remember, you did some with some of the automakers, you did some with some of the large corporations. I'm interested to hear what was some of the learnings from those things, or any insights that you could share with the world, especially that, you are sitting in Europe and we're sitting in the US.
What exactly would you like to know?
Just like the project, how, and some, did it work the way you imagined it? Did it work differently?
I mean, one culture difference that I experienced quite a lot of time is people from Austria or from Europe sometimes tend to be a little bit rude, especially from Austria and Germany. So we are somehow used to be very honest. So honest to a point where it's already a bit of rude. And on the other hand, and I had this experience at the co-working camp, I had someone from the US, from Silicon Valley. He used to run a co-working space in Lebanon, in Beirut. And he was so warmly welcoming. He was like, you should come to Beirut and visit me, and I will be there for you. And I thought, okay, I'm coming. And when I say I'm coming, I'm coming. So he was then very astonished as I was entering his co-working space in Beirut, and I said, here I am. He did not expect me to do it. Yeah, I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. So most of the time I'm not joking.
That's awesome.
So be careful what you're wishing for and what you're promising me. I will come back to it.
Well, you already know this. You're welcome to come back to Michigan anytime. So, bring your family, and this time spend driving around, exploring the different things for 3.5-year-old kid. There are all kinds of cool activities that we can have you doing in Michigan.
Be
You know,
careful.
yeah. No, this is no, be careful. This is like, I think my wife and kids would enjoy it. And I think many people in Michigan that you visited with would love to see you again. So I think it's an open invitation, Romy. And with COVID is a little tough, and we wanted to ask about that, about your work, but I am hoping that it seems like some signs of October opening up to the world, and it seems like a lot more things opening up next year. So it seems like, between, my predicting based on what I'm reading from these smart people about, travel, that the next 18 months, will be another shift slowly to change to whatever the new norm that we're going to look like. I'm curious to hear with COVID. I know we've spoken before, but like, how did it affect you? And what was anything that you might have changed to keep business going since COVID hits?
To be honest, it affected me in the first 2 weeks. So it was on March the 13th as we had the lockdown, and it was a little bit in my memory like in a horror movie. All the people went to the stores in Austria, especially people were really afraid that they don't have enough toilet paper at home. So everyone was going shopping. And I called my friend and said, is it like crazy like that where you are right now as well? Or is it only in my village like that? And she said, no, it's the same where she's living. So that everyone was on the street on this Friday, having enough gas in the car, having enough toilet paper, making sure to have all the fridge and everything filled up with food. It felt a little bit like a war is coming. And it was freaking. And in this moment, I thought, will my co-working space sustain such a crisis? I was researching about the Spanish flu, because pandemic, it was totally new that we have a pandemic. So the Spanish flu was the last pandemic that we really had. And this is ages ago. And then I thought, will people ever come to a co-working space again? Or is this over in 2 weeks? And I'm an optimist, so I thought it will be over in 2 weeks. So no worries. So we went on like that, a little bit like watching the drama from outside, because I'm living in a village, as I said, and for me, what should happen? I mean, I can go out to the lake, even if it's not allowed, but I do it because I can use my brain on my own, and I can really find out if it's dangerous or not. But there are people out there who never ever went to the lake again because it was not allowed. I did my yoga sessions there. I had the best yoga sessions ever, totally alone at the lake with some birds and my yoga teacher, because she immediately switched to online. Big shout out to our yoga teacher, Pascal. She did an awesome job. She's not the online expert, but she immediately flipped her business into online yoga in the first days already. And then after 3 or 4 weeks, we had the system in the co-working space that we are usually 30, 40 people there at the same time, and we used the doodle tool to schedule who will be there when. So we said, let's not be more than 5 at the same time, and this worked out quite well. We did not have any other regulations from the government because we are a tiny business, so the government cannot care about how to behave in a co-working space. They can tell us how to behave in a restaurant or in a hotel or in public space, but not in a industry like co-working. And so we began to start behaving a little bit like Sweden. You know, Sweden is always a bit different, in a cool way different, because Sweden started to say, we don't do anything. People have to know it on their own, what they have to do. We can only provide them with the information that we have about this pandemic and all the numbers and statistics, but we cannot prohibit anyone to anything, or for yeah. And that's how we did it. So after 2-3 weeks, we started to come a little bit back to normal. And this, for a lot of people, was totally crazy. I know people who never came back to work after March the 13th in 2020. Of course, we had some rules. We had distance rules, we had a lot of cleaning rules, and we had the rules of not shaking hands, of course, that's very obvious. And of course, we didn't do our seminars that we planned to do in the group size of 10 to 15 people. So we also flipped there to online seminars. But the co-workers themselves, who are sitting in a distance to each other, they were allowed to come back after 3 weeks. And they were so happy coming back. They felt like trapped at home. They went crazy. The ceiling was coming closer, and it was the best time ever. Even they cared so much for each other. You know, these IT people usually are not so. I mean, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but some IT people from the coders and nerds do not care too much if the neighbor, the co-worker, is having lunch. But after COVID, they really cared for each other. Do you want to have food? Should I bring something for you? And this is awesome. And it's still up to now like that.
Wow, Romy. I mean, this is what a fascinating story. And it's clear to me that each place seems to have handled this COVID a little bit differently. And of course, you know, when you're 9 million people, that size of 1/3 of the state of Michigan, is different than when you know, Michigan is 3 times the size with 10 million people, and it handled it completely different. Of course, I also think the behavior of the people and the, you know, the culture, those kinds of things make a big difference. And I'm so glad to hear that you've had some awesome people around you to be able to flip the switch to be digital really quick. And, you know, it sounds like very similar actually to us in Michigan. There are some people that now we're saying, let's go back to work. And they're like, I'm not coming. And then others are like, oh, when do I show? I've been going anyway. No one is there, but I've been showing up because I can't be at home anymore. So that new dramatic differences seems to just keep going. And it sounds like you're also seeing some of that in Salzburg as well, right? That's my impression.
Yeah, it's different for everyone, I think. And we are this bubble who is like self-employed, and we can decide on our own how we behave with it. And most of our people dealt it with it quite relaxed.
Has business changed? Like, did it go up or go down or modified or stayed pretty much consistent for the coworkers that you have at the co-working space?
To be honest, my turnover grew a little bit
Hmm.
because usually I do a lot of events, and we have a stage, and events usually are a lot of work and not so much profit or revenue. And so we last summer we decided to remove the stage and have desks there, so I can make more revenue with less effort.
Okay, so it sounds like you grew the business rather than shrinking the business.
Yeah.
That's well, congratulations on that. And I'm sorry that we had to do a crisis for you to figure that out, but I'm glad that you figured it out. Rami, I mean, we could clearly keep you here for the next 2 weeks, 2 days, asking you questions to learn more about what you're doing. Maybe we could close it the next. And by the way, if anyone who would like to ask a question, please feel free to either put it in the chat or put it in the Q&A section, either way. And I'm happy to bring you, if you want to say something to the stage as well. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the book. What did you write about?
Mm-hmm. So the book,
Do What You Love.
it's Do What You Love, and it's for people who think about starting their own co-working space. So the topic is the co-working guide to the galaxy, how to open your own co-working space and attract world-class people. And what I'm really proud of, and here also shout out to you and to the Young Transatlantic Initiative program, is on my travel to the US, I met this wonderful person, Fridtjof Bergmann. He lived in Ann Arbor until last month, where he sadly died in the age of 90, but he really had a rich and fulfilled life. So I think it's totally okay for him. And he started to think about new work and what it means, how we could positively impact the globe, all the resources, nature, through the way we work together. And I'm so glad that I met him when I was traveling the US with you, Michigan, Detroit, and Ann Arbor. And he was so friendly that he wrote a little section of the book. And he did research about co-working Salzburg, and he found out that co-working Salzburg, the way how we are developing the co-working space, the way we treat people and what we do, is the application of his theory. And this is really like a big treasure for us, because he's really the pioneer and the one who started with this movement of new work. So he introduced the term new work to the world.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. And thank you so much for sharing that. I'm assuming people can buy the book, obviously, on Amazon or anywhere else. And I'm assuming you took the hard way of self-publishing, knowing Romy and what she likes to do. That's great, Romy. I'm always thankful for all these opportunities. And obviously, you were on a fellowship exchange with the Department of State sponsor program that Global Ties in Detroit sponsored to bring you here. And I was lucky to meet you and have you be one of the fellows that we've hosted in the business, international strategic management. And I'm sure Global Ties and their partners are always interested to hearing your updates and all the things that you're doing. So let's, just so we could end on time, maybe you could give us, if you were to go back and see Romy 10 years ago, Romy today, what she knows, what would you tell Romy then? Now, I know there are lots of things, and the truth is, I always tell people there's probably something that if you knew then, you would have started. So maybe not that one, but one thing that you feel like if you would have known that, it would have helped you or pushed you in a different direction.
Um, you know, I have a patience problem.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm really not patient, so I hate waiting. But I would tell myself, be patient, because in Austria we say, der stetige Tropfen ölt den Stein. So the steady raindrop is like bringing bringing you to where you want to go. And this has a lot to do with patience. And I think it's true. Sticking to the topic of co-working, in the first glance looked like a not very profitable dreamer idea of a person who maybe is rather a hippie than anything else, or surely not interesting for investors or for any proper money making. But it turned out that all my dreams, everything I ever wanted, became true because I stick to this idea of co-working. I stick to this vision of that we work together, and that when I help people, they will help me in return, that I can travel the world, that I can meet the most inspiring people, that I can live in a beautiful house, that I can have enough time for my son. And I'm mentioning it now at the second time. The first 6 years in a person's life are so important. And yeah, being a hustler for your dreams and your job and your startup is important, but your kids are important as well. And so I'm dedicating now this time of my life, especially this summer. We have the best summer ever. So we are enjoying the lakes almost every day when it's beautiful outside. We opened a co-working beach so that I can combine both being with my son, being at the beach with him, and also having interesting conversations with new co-workers, with my existing co-workers. Because on a beach, you have totally different conversations than you have in an office. And so I learned that one of my coworkers is getting a baby, and I would have not known it only in the office by speaking at the coffee. Maybe I would have known it much later, and now I know it already, and that's beautiful. And what I'm most proud of is that my son, he's so open-minded. I always call him a co-working baby. He's entering a shop or the co-working beach or any location, and he's shouting like, "Hey, hi there, it's me. Hello, how are you?" And this makes me so proud because he loves people.
That's awesome. That's so cool. At 3.5 years old, already doing all that stuff. That's fabulous. And of course, we could have a whole nother conversation about this beach co-working space. But maybe you could leave us with one word. If you want to leave someone today with a word, what would it be? Based on our conversation today, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Do what you love, do what you really, really want. Never stop reflecting on it. And if tomorrow you start something new because what you wanted yesterday is not the same as what you want today, do it.
Yeah, Romy, we can keep you for days. Thank you so much for making the time. I know it's in the afternoon in your hometown right now, and I appreciate you making the time for this to be with us here in Michigan.
Of course.
Grind. I think, do you say it Schwein? Is it Schwein? Like goodbye in Austrian? I was trying to get Google to
Auf
tell.
Wiedersehen. Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen. Auf Wiedersehen. Okay. So nice to see you again, and thank you so much. I'm sure I'll see you online. Thanks a million, Romy. Have a great day.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, Ferris.